very bleak picture, and this is what the apocalypse will look like, does look like. And I think one of the things that novelist Richard Flanagan, who you're quoting there, mentioned is also the politics of climate change. He believes, and I think he's right, that Australia is committing climate suicide, as he describes it. So on the one hand, they're pulling coal out of the ground and gas out as fast as possible, and on the other, the whole eastern part of Australia is on fire in ways that are so intense, so quick, so dangerous. You know, as someone sitting in California, where I thought I had seen big fires, they're nothing compared to what's happening in New South Wales and Victoria.
Yeah, exactly. And we can only look at this from a distance, and you saw those aerial pictures, or you have seen those aerial pictures. Now, experts are saying that it hasn't helped, that Australia's Prime Minister was not only slow to react to this crisis, but also has been hesitant to make this link between the fires, the temperatures, and climate change.
Right.
Do you agree, and what has that done?
Well, he also went on vacation in the midst of it, as did the emergency services director in Victoria. And, you know, it's like as if this doesn't matter. First of all, we have to get serious. COP25 has not done its job. We've never figured out the international language to control climate change. So what we're seeing in Australia is actually a bellwether for what's going to be happening around the globe. The smaller fires in California, I thought, were signal flares, but obviously Australia is like a holocaust of infernos, and if we don't take this message seriously, I'm not sure what we will.
Well, let's expand on the fact that the Prime Minister hasn't really embraced this connection between climate change, and overwhelmingly the world scientists are saying certainly there is this connection. And there was a new study out just last week that by every day you can see the human thumbprint left on climate around the world.
Yes. Yeah, no, that's a great question, and I think part of the political capital that the Prime Minister enjoys is that Rupert Murdoch basically controls the newspapers and the media in Australia, and they deny climate change. So he's safe in that regard, but his people aren't. And I think that's where you're now beginning to see emergency services, firefighters, first responders, and average Australians are starting to argue, and you can see it in the media in Australia, that we can't ignore this any longer. And, you know, that's true for the rest of us on the planet. The science is there. It's irrefutable. What's problematic is the politics that suggest that fossil fuel carbon must continue to drive our economies. And until we break that cycle, until we break that dependency, we're going to continue to see more Australias.
You know, there is still a full month left in Australia's fire season, and this collection of fires has burned an area the size of Switzerland. Let's take this beyond Australia's borders. What can world leaders do to rally support? And you have to be concerned that the next lightning rod, the next area, is out there just waiting to go up in flames.
Well, and I think we can predict it. You know, there are 5 or 6 Mediterranean ecozones in the world: Australia, South Africa, Chile, the United States, California, and the Mediterranean basin itself. Periodically, those places go up in flames. They tend to be pretty developed economies. And so, therefore, that's where we need to see the political action, and we're not seeing it.
You talked about Rupert Murdoch earlier. I'm sure our global audience knows he's the media magnate who really controls conservative media. But you have U.S. President Donald Trump pulling out of the Paris Climate Accord, and virtually no nation has been able to match the lofty goals that were set a few years back in Paris. And again, I don't mean to sound like gloom and doom here, but if the majority of scientists in the world are correct, well, it's just bad.
It's really bad, and you aren't being doom and gloom. You're being realistic. This isn't cynicism arguing. It is actually a kind of realpolitik. We are seeing the consequences of our inaction. And it, you know, when President Trump pulled out of the Paris Climate Accords, it's as if to say to the world, this stuff doesn't matter. And Australia is showing us that it does.